button. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to type in the chat box.
Okay,
so
and I'm going to close it and thoughts down for the moment.
We are now live. So if you don't see the video, click the start button above. If you still don't see it,
refresh your screen.
Refresh your page. You have a cached version. All right. Welcome aboard, everybody. It is Sunday night, and that means it is time for Sunday Live with Richard Nongard and Scott Sandlin, sponsored by the ICBCH, HPTI, HypnoThoughts.com, and all things great. So I'm really glad that everybody's here. Of course, down below is a chat box, and you can type your name in the chat box. You can say hello, tell us where you're from. Lots of people already here, and that is fantastic. The room is full. People wondered, would the room be full with the football game going on here in the USA? And my theory was that hypnotists love hypnosis, even if they like football. So I knew the room would be full. Scott Sandlin will probably be joining us here in a little while. But tonight we have a great guest, and that guest is known by some as Laurie Shaw and known by others as Fable Goodman, the world-famous longtime moderator of HypnoThoughts.com, a great storyteller. I've certainly enjoyed his videos, and master hypnotist, and a lot of other things. And he has been kind enough to stay up until 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning there in the UK. So without further ado, Laurie, will you say hello to everybody and introduce yourself to those who might not know who you are?
I'll do that. Who changes those pictures?
Changes the pictures automatically.
It does it, indeed. Well, I didn't know that. Okay, this is Fable Goodman to some people. My family know me as Laurie Shaw. That's the given name I have. But I've called myself Fable Goodman for quite a long time for various reasons. But none of them nefarious.
That's always good to know. Now, you're in London, or are you in another city in the UK?
We do have more than one city in the UK, yeah. London is about 300 miles south of me.
Oh, okay. For some reason, I thought you were in London, so you're in the north.
I'm in the north, yeah. Northeast of England, on the coast. It's a place called Sunderland.
Ah, okay.
Now, if you've heard of Newcastle and Durham,
yep,
it's quite near those.
Yeah.
So, oh look.
Oh, see, now you've zoomed in right there on your nose hairs. Now, let me ask you a couple questions, because you have a lot of insight into hypnosis and hypnotists. You've been the moderator of HypnoThoughts for at least 7 or 8 years, since the beginning, right? Or almost at the beginning?
Not quite the beginning. There was another guy before me, who you'll know. I forget his name.
Sure, but almost since the beginning. Now, you've been interacting basically with 17,000 hypnotists for the last, let's call it 5 or 6 years. What have you learned from being the moderator of a hypnosis discussion forum? What surprises you about hypnotists, and what are you really glad to see come out of the interaction of all of those hypnotists online?
Oh, gosh, that's an interesting question. It is fascinating, and the only reason I do it is because it is fascinating. And every so often, you get to interact with somebody who you think, my God, I'm sitting here in my humble little abode in Elmwood Street in Sunderland, and here I am talking to Gil Boyne, for instance.
Sure.
Shan't be doing that again, but it was a privilege to do that. And then today I noticed somebody who joined a couple of years ago, and he does workshops up in Vancouver.
Sure.
And he trained very, very, very closely with Richard Bandler. And you remember the book, The Adventures of Anybody?
Uh-huh.
You read that book?
A long time ago.
Yeah. So it's a fable, a story by Richard Bandler. And it's a fantasy story about anybody. and it goes on. And I got this book a couple of years ago. My friend Gary, you've seen some of my videos that Gary's been the editor on, and sometimes he's been my subject when we've done demonstrations. I borrowed the book off him about 4 years ago, and I started reading it. I thought, Jesus, I wrote a story just like that. It's a story about a prince who goes on a journey, and there's this battle going on, and there's this going on, and I thought, has he been reading my stuff? Has he heard some of my takes? I don't know. But I was fascinated, and I started reading this book, and I got into about the second chapter, and I thought, this is great. And I put it down beside the bed. Now, 2 years later, I'm sitting in the chat room at Hidden Thoughts, chatting to somebody, and a guy comes on called Mark. Now, Mark somehow, in the middle of the conversation, mentions this book. And I said, oh, I've got a copy of that. Funnily enough, I picked it up in the bedroom, covered in dust. I dusted it off, and I brought it into here. This is my little sort of den. I sometimes call it the library, the archives, the study. I brought it in here, and I put it down on the desk so that I would be able to read it. It was there as a reminder. And it had sat there for about 6 months. I hadn't opened it. I got about 2 chapters in, and I got no further. I stalled. Now, I did the same thing with one of Richard Bach's books. You know, I read things like Illusions and Jonathan Livingston Seagull, Bridge Across Forever. Thoroughly enjoyed them, read them several times. Now, I got to a book called something about safety, looking for safety, or... I started reading it, and it got to a bit in the book, about 3 chapters in, where he was reminiscing, going back in time. It's like, sort of like a regression, really. He was going back in his mind to a time when he was climbing up a ladder to a water tower. And I thought, I've climbed ladders when I was on ships at sea, when the ship's been going like that, with a light bulb in one hand and a bucket in the other hand, clinging on, oh sorry, the light bulb's in the bucket, clinging onto the ladder, climbing this ladder while the ship's going like this in a force 10 gale because the light bulb has gone out in the navigation lights. Now, you can't cross an ocean with your lights turned off, you've got to have them on. The reason for this is because ships are heavy, right? They're made of metal, everyone knows that. And because they're heavy, they would sink. When it's dark, they would sink. If your lights are turned on, you stay afloat. I mean, that's obviously the only reason to have them. There's some sort of navigational reason as well, but that's beyond me. I only spent 7 years training as a navigator, so I forget what the reason is. But these navigation lights, the law says you've got to have them. You have rules of the road at sea. They call them rules of the road, even though it's sea. And it's just like learning a highway code or whatever you have in America where you take a driving lesson. You've got to learn how to not just drive the car, but how to negotiate safely from, let's say, Los Angeles to New York without hitting anybody or killing anybody. So you agree we'll drive, in your case, on the right-hand side of the road. As long as we all have a consensus about that, we all agree about that, then it makes things a lot easier. And if we agree which way you go around, what we call a roundabout, I'm not sure what you call them, but you come to a junction where there's 3 roads come together, and you go round, and you go left or right or ahead. And if we agree, here in England, we go clockwise, around a roundabout, and you indicate left when you're going to turn off. Dead simple, as long as we all agree.
Which is why it's dangerous for me to drive in the UK, because I go counterclockwise in the roundabout.
Well, don't do it again. They'll tell you off.
Now, let me ask you a question. You've been doing hypnosis probably your whole life. I think you and I probably agree on a lot of attitudes about hypnosis, and that it's not that we're really doing something as much as we're trying to make life hypnotic. But you've been doing hypnosis for a long, long time, but you're also a master storyteller. And I've seen some of your plays and skits and those kind of things. How does storytelling blend into hypnosis, and how has that gift of yours as an actor or theatrical performer really helped you to be a better hypnotist?
Well, I'll tell you something. I'm not officially an actor, but some point, I mean, I've done a lot of group facilitation work. I used to run groups of all sorts, and for a long time I was in a voluntary telephone counselling organisation. And so people would ring up and they'd tell us their problem. It could be simple, like, how do I find the nearest pub? Or it could be, I'm thinking of committing suicide, and my parents don't know I'm gay, so I can't tell them, and what should I do? Over the years, I've sort of counseled a lot of people doing that. And one of the things is exactly the same skill that I learned at sea, navigating. You have to pay attention, you have to keep a lookout. So going back to the rules of the road, because we're going somewhere with this, don't worry about that. If we all agree on what the rules are and there's some sort of consensus, it keeps things safe. So here's me climbing the ladders with a light bulb in a bucket, because when you get to the top, I've got to unfasten a waterproof container, take the old light bulb out, which isn't working, put it in the bucket, get the new light bulb out of the bucket, put it in, all the time holding onto the ladder with one arm with the bucket in it. It's very tough, and the ship's going like that at the same time. So, reading this book by Richard Bach, I got to that point and I stalled. I've never finished that book. I only got so far. So, coming back to Hypnothoughts, here I am in the chat room chatting with this guy called Mark, and he mentions this book, and I said, oh, I tried to read that, but I got so far, then I stopped. And he said, why don't you get the audio version? Well, I'd never done that before. Reading's reading, that's what you do. And he said, no, I've got the audio version, it's really easy, and it's the person who's reading it, he knows exactly what the story's about. And so he puts the right inflection. Very good. I said, oh, well, I'll think about that, but I don't do audio books. It's something I've never done, Well, bugger me, figuratively speaking. This guy turns out to be the same guy, not Mark. The guy who joined Hypnothoughts a couple of years ago is the same guy who read the audio book. Now, when I seen his profile just recently, a couple of days ago, I looked at him and I thought, I know him. And so I clicked onto his website, read his brief, and I thought, here it says, this is the man who read the book. He did the narration of the book, The Adventures of Anybody. I thought, God, there's a coincidence. And so the next time I spoke to Mark, I said, have you got a spare copy of that audio book? And he clicked something, and there it was on my screen. MP3 or Google something or other. So I was listening then to this person who, in my eyes, is a master of NLP training, blah, blah, blah. You've probably heard of him. I can't remember his name, Harry something or other. And this happens. So being on Hypnothoughts, I get to interact with some of the best hypnotists in the world. Now, I'm not an actor, but when I do these training things, which I was talking about, running groups, I used to do the training for the counsellors at this organisation I worked for, voluntary, and I ran loads and loads of groups. I went to conferences and run groups there, and we'd play drama-type games, group warm-up games. And then years later, a friend of mine was working for a drama, sort of on-the-road educational drama troupe. They went around various schools doing pantomimes and little shows, and they ran after-school drama clubs. So some of their members would go to a school around just a closing time of school, which is about 4 o'clock our time, PM, and for an hour they'd have a group who they'd run some sort of drama activity with every week for the whole term or the whole school year. Well, they had more schools than tutors. And so my friend Lucinda, who, as it turns out now, is the mother of my children, she wasn't then, she says, you could run one of those after-school drama clubs. And I said, I'm not a teacher. And she said, but you do that all the time. I said, but I'm not an actor. She says, you don't have to be an actor, you have to know how to run a group and how to facilitate a game and set some clear boundaries so that everybody in the room feels safe to work within that group. Just the same as I was saying about C, we have an agreed consensus on what are the rules of the road. If we all stick to the right-hand side of the road in America, the left side of the road in England, or when you're at sea, two ships coming together, like that, if they're on a collision course, they both turn to the right. Starboard, we used to call it. As long as everybody knows that, we all agree to stick by those ground rules, everything becomes much safer, and everybody feels so much more comfortable to get on and enjoy their life and arrive at their destination safely.
So, I noticed Scott has joined us here.
I've just seen that, yeah.
And what we do every Sunday night is we get together here and we talk about hypnosis. Scott and I share some things that we know and that we've learned, and we frequently have guests on, and Laurie Shaw, also known as Fable Goodman, is our guest tonight. Scott, hello, welcome aboard.
Forgive me for being late. It wasn't that I was just screwing around. I'm literally doing this through my cell phone. I have no idea what's going on with my home internet. I was running late because of the Super Bowl, and it was one of those Murphy's Law situations. But I'm glad to be here, and I'm glad to be hanging out with both Richard Nongard and, in my mind, Fable Goodman. I know he's Laurie Shaw, but I think of him first as Fable. So sorry I'm late, guys. I hope I didn't slow things down.
Not at all.
Not at all.
But one of the things that happens is I never lose track of the thread. Right. Now, if I'm telling a story, and for whatever reason it gets sidetracked, and when you're working with a client, you know, working in therapy with a client, they'll go off left and right. You start talking about something, you get onto a particular subject that's really important, and they'll change the subject and go off somewhere or ask you a question. It's really important you remember where you were up to in the whole process. Now, it's not just where I'm up to in the script of the induction or the therapy. It's what is this person talking about? Where were they up to? And if I want to pick up on that thread, can I get myself back there at an appropriate time and carry on? Oh, yeah, that's right. That's very interesting. But we were talking a few minutes ago. You mentioned blah, 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 blah. And I was just wondering if, and then we pick up the thread again. So here's me talking about all sorts of different things: navigation, seamanship, rules of the road, getting from A to B, and all the things I've learned by the experts on hypnothoughts. But here's me, and Lucinda says to me, you could be running one of these drama groups. I said, well, I can't. You know, I'm not a drama teacher, I'm not qualified, I'm not an actor. And she just said, well, that's what you do. You run groups, and you hold the safe boundaries so that people in the group know that they can do what they need to do. And I said, well, yeah, but... She said, well, think about it. The next day, this woman called Beverly rings me up from this, it was called Flabbergast Arts Company. And she says, Lucinda's told us that you could do... And I said, has she indeed? So I started doing an after-school drama club at one school. And then eventually I was doing 4 a week, 4 different nights a week, 4 different schools, and after school drama for an hour or so. Now, it would take me sometimes half an hour to get there, like with these stories. And sometimes I'd jump in the car, but before I went, I'd have my bag of tricks. You know, I'm the sort of facilitator that has a bag of tricks. There's lots of different facilitation styles, but I'm boy wonder. I have everything in my bag that I could possibly need for the session. And sometimes it's just, you know, my head, that's in the bag. Sometimes it's some notes, sometimes it's the register for the group, sometimes it's a whole lot of juggling equipment, things that they can actually utilize. And I'll get all this ready beforehand, I'll make my way to the school, I'll allow plenty of time for that. I'll get there quarter of an hour early. I'll set the room up the way I want it, not the way that it was set before. I'm going to have all the chairs in a circle. And sometimes, you know, call me obsessive compulsive if you want, I'd get a piece of string and I'd measure that circle to make sure that it was concentric. Every chair pointing directly towards the centre of the circle, so everybody in that circle was equal. I'd have a chair, but I wouldn't have the biggest chair. I'd just have a chair. And when people come in, the kids would come in and they'd move the chairs. They'd start to test the boundaries, and I would set a clear boundary one way or another, and often make a game out of it. And so I became a drama tutor. I've got no skills, no training whatsoever as an actor. But, you know, who has? Well, some people spend years and years and years with Stanislavski doing method acting and all that sort of stuff. Here's me, I just say, well, just make it up as you go along. It's like life, isn't it? So that's one strand. Storytelling. It was a complete accident that I got the name Fable. As most therapists do, counsellors, from time to time, some people do it on a very, very regular basis, is have supervision. And I was having regular weekly supervision when I was seeing, say, 20, 30 clients a week. I think, well, I should have a session of supervision every week. And I'd go and see a professional supervisor who was a psychotherapist, group facilitator, shaman, call him what you want. And I'd sit for an hour telling him what's going on in my life, how things are going with my work, where I'm feeling stuck, where I need a bit of help, where I need to just talk about, this is what I'm feeling as a result of what I'm doing working with these clients. So-and-so's doing this, and that's similar to a situation in my life. So, I need to talk about how that affects me so I can clear that. And then I'm free to deal with the client's issues, not to let my issues get in the way. That's what supervision's all about. So, in a supervision session, this John, I call him Dr. John, he's not really a doctor. He said something quite significant, because we've been talking about all the various names I've been called over the years. Some names that other people have gave me, nicknames, other names which I'd given myself for whatever reason. So when I was a child, my father called me Little Man. And that became my nickname. Everybody said, "Little man, come over here." Yeah. "Little man, little man." It was a family nickname, and everybody called it Little Man. I was quite small when I was born. That was probably the reason. My sister, Anne-Marie, she was called Tickle. Now, that came about because my uncle, Jesse, he used to say to her when she was a baby, "Anne-Marie, tickle me knee. Anne-Marie, tickle me knee." And it got abbreviated to Tickle. She had that nickname for years. I don't think anybody's called that recently. So here was me called Little Man, Laurie. A bit later on, people used strange names, In one class, the class bully made some comment about my nose. He said I had a big nose. Well, I don't know, it's a nose. It's slightly bent and it's there. But at the time, I was in school, maybe 13, 14 years old. It's that sort of age where when somebody says something about your body, you take it to heart. He said I've got a big nose. But the next thing is, everybody in the class is calling me Nebby. Now, Neb isn't a nickname for nose. That's your Neb. And Nebby means a nosy person, somebody who pokes their nose into people's business. But there's other things, like Schnossel Durante gets called Schnossel because he has a big schnozzle. There's a whole host of names that were given to me which were insults. Now, when somebody tells you a lie, there's a part of you that knows straight away that's a lie. If somebody says to me, "I'm black," I think, "No, I'm not. What? I know I'm white." But if 1,000 people kept saying to me I was black, I might start to doubt it. Well, that's an extreme example. But if somebody says, "You're not very attractive, you've got a big nose, you're not worthy of anything," they're telling you lies, because inside I know we're all born good, loving, intelligent, cooperative, capable, zestful, creative. We have a vast range of possibilities what we're born with. And then, as we go through life, people tell us other things. I came from a town called Bradford, and that's about halfway between here and London. So it's about 150 miles south of here. It's a working class, very working class, used to be a mill town where people made wool from sheep's. What's this sort of thing? It's nice. My sister knit this for me years ago. Anyway, so I was working class, brought up very poor, 6 children, 1 father working, and because you got paid more if you worked a night shift, he worked permanent night shifts to bring in enough money to feed 6 children. And when we moved to Sunderland, I had a Yorkshire accent. And it's still there to some degree. Most people I speak to them, they say, "Where are you from? You sound like you're from Yorkshire." No, that was 50 years ago. But people took the mickey out of me from my accent. They said I was thick. They said I was common. They said they just made the fun of me. And when this happens over and over and over again, people tell you things about yourself which part of you knows isn't right, but you start to believe those lies. You know, you'll never amount to much because you're this. When I got to about the 4th or 5th year of school, we had to go for what was called a careers talk with one of the senior tutors. And they sort of said, "Well, how have you been doing this? What do you want to do when you get out of school?" And I said, "I want to be an archaeologist." I was very interested in, more in geology and fossils, etc. I was interested in archaeology. I want to be an archaeologist. He said, "Oh, you can't do that. You need A levels and O levels to do that. And then you have to go to university. You'll never get there. Set your sights a bit lower." Now, this was the deputy head of the school telling me to set my sights lower. This is the sort of stuff I was told and the names that I was given. And so he reflected this back to me. He said, "It seems you've had lots of names over the years, but none of them are names you've chosen for yourself. And it sort of seems like you've been searching all this time for a name." I said, "That's jolly interesting." So,
Fable, let me ask you a quick question here. And every Sunday night we get together, 9 o'clock Dallas time, 7 o'clock Pacific time, to talk about hypnosis, to talk about different things that we can learn. And clearly one of the things you love to do is tell stories, but you and I actually sort of became friends when back in 2009, I think it was, you heard one of my progressive muscle relaxation cassettes or something like that, and you posted my favorite thread on HypnoThoughts of all time, which was titled "The Benefit of a Daily Practice," which for a long time had more replies to it than anyone else.
It still does.
What that thread had was basically you said, "Hey, if you do what you've done, and that is you listen to or practice something as simple as PMR every single day for a month, your life will be completely different." And you said, "I'm going to challenge the readers of this blog or HypnoThoughts to actually try this every day for a month." And you gave out an MP3 of a progressive muscle relaxation session. And what was amazing was that for the next year, there were over 20 pages of people saying, "Wow, something that simple truly was profound and changed me." Now, I know that long before this thread, you already knew what the benefits of a daily practice were, but how do you see practicing what we ask our clients to do as being really a key to good hypnosis?
I think it's very important. I remember last week you were saying something along those lines to Scott and then later on to Kelly about how useful it is for hypnotists, particularly hypnotherapists, to practice what they preach, but also to experience what they preach. It's no good me sort of saying you might feel like this, you might feel like that, if I've never experienced it myself. And if I've never practiced mindfulness, which I mean is a buzzword these days, we used to call it meditation. When I was at sea, we used to call it watch keeping, being watchful. I was a navigator, and for 4 hours at a stretch, I'd be standing on the navigation bridge watching out to keep safety, to keep everything going the right way, not just steering the ship and making sure we had run the right course. That was part of my job, but being watchful, looking out for other ships. Sometimes in the pitch dark, standing there for hours on end, just looking It's a meditation. It's a mindful focus. And all of that stuff goes on. And then for years and years, I practiced Buddhist mindfulness of breathing meditation, various other meditations, some Gurdjieff work, which is all to do with the same thing. It's waking up, being in the here and now, focusing on what's going on, rather than what you're thinking about from the past or what's going to happen in the future. And, you know, it's the past 10 years or so, this has been catching on within the whole of the therapy. You read about all the time mindfulness-based practice. And I just think, well, it's what we've been doing for years. They've stuck a new label on it, much the same as the NLP practitioners stuck a new label on a whole load of different techniques. Sure, they refined them, put them in a certain order. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. But there's a new name, but the basic process of what they've been doing is not that much different from what we've been doing for years and years and years. Does that answer a question?
So, I think, if I may interject, I think the name Fable is so good for you because you speak in fables in such a good way. Because, you know, to me, a fable is it's a story with a lesson that is designed to keep children engaged, and so it has to have. And maybe that's more of an American connotation of the word, but there's a sense of playfulness, there's a sense of approachability, and then there's a sense of wonder. And I thought about this about your name over the years, and because I didn't know, you know, when we just started, you know, I knew you as Fable before I knew you as Laurie, and so by the time I found out your name was Laurie, I had gotten used to it being Fable. And then I found out, wait, his name isn't really that, you know, after a couple of weeks or whatever. And so over the years of knowing you, I've paid attention to the way you answer questions and the way you talk about anything, really. It's like I said, those elements of the fable. There is a sense of playfulness and approachability. There is a sense of morality and a lesson that's in there. And there's a sense of abstraction that makes it easier for people to be open to learning new things. And I think you do all of those things really wonderfully, and I think you just demonstrated that with your answer to Richard there.
Well, thank you. Now, just to finish the story. So this guy said to me, it seems like you've been searching for a name. The next week, I went off on a week-long break with a whole bunch of men in the Lake District in England. Very beautiful, scenic area. And we're doing lots of activities like abseiling, climbing, rock climbing, as well as just hanging out in this big house together. There was 35 gay men all in one big mansion by the side of a lake, doing group activities. Nothing, you know, interesting, but not personal growth type stuff. Now, one day we went abseiling off this huge cliff by the side of a stream, and having done that, walking back along the stream at the bottom to the car park. And as we were walking along, I was walking along holding hands with the guy who was my partner at the time. And we're just walking along this pathway, holding hands, having a little chat. And I looked towards the stream about 100 yards ahead, and a little glint caught my eyes, like the sun caught on something. It could have been broken glass, it could have been anything. It was just a glint. And it caught my eye, and I dropped Paul's hand, and I walked directly towards it. And it's over here on my other desk somewhere. I won't find it. It's too cluttered. When I got there, I found a dog collar. Now, I don't mean a priest's dog collar, I mean a dog collar from a dog, and it had a name tag on it. And I picked it up, and I looked at the name tag, and it said Fable. The dog that lost that collar was called Fable. Now, during this week-long, well, let's call it a retreat, I've been telling some stories. And when I picked this up, I looked at the name, and I thought, Jesus Christ, that name has just found me. The name found me. Now, What do you think I did with the dog collar? I know I've told you it's on the desk over there, but what do you think I did with it at that moment?
I really want to let you put that thing on.
I put it on. I put it round my neck, I fastened it, and it fit perfectly with the name tag at the front saying Fable. And I went back from the side of the stream onto the path. I said, look what I found. And Paul turned, looked at it, and he said to me, Fable. I said, yes, how can I help you? And that is how I got the name. Now, over the years, many people have asked me, particularly on Hypnothoughts, how did you get the name Fable? That's the first time I've told the story here. So, this is a great place. The thing that you're seeking often is seeking you. And what you have to do is stop looking and just be. Engage in the activity. And the thing that you are seeking will come and find you. And you know, although there's a pile of stuff over there, I'll just see if I can see this with that's part of the desk, that's an ashtray. That's the pile of stuff I'm talking about. Somewhere underneath that pile is that dog collar. And if I was really that much bothered, I mean, I take it you believe me, if I wanted to prove myself, I could put my hand out there and within 2 minutes find it. Maybe tomorrow. It's what time is it? 25 to 4 now. So we've covered a bit of ground with navigation, seamanship, mindfulness, watchfulness. I was trained as a watchkeeper. Now, a watchkeeper at sea, amongst other things, winds the clocks up and makes sure that the clocks at sea are on time. And so when I was what's called second mate, second officer, that's the navigating officer. And the duties of the navigating officer is to be on watch at the bridge from 12 o'clock noon till 4 o'clock in the afternoon, then to knock off and do other duties, as well as eating, sleeping, socialising, working, and then at 12 o'clock midnight, start again. A 4-hour watch system. I would do 12 to 4. The third mate, which was me a few years earlier, would do 8 till 12, and the first mate, he would do 4 till 8, yeah. It's a long time ago. And they used to have 8 bells per watch. So the first bell goes at past, the second bell goes 1 o'clock, third bell goes 1:30, so on. 8 bells is the end of the watch. You've heard the expression, when 8 bells toll. That's the time when you change watch. And so there's a 7-bell breakfast or a 7-bell lunch. And that's for the person who's on watch to get up and have their breakfast before the rest of the crew. So when I was a third mate, the 7-bell breakfast would be at 7:30. At 7 bells, I would get at 7:30, have my breakfast, and then go by 5 to 8 at least, if not 10 to 8, up to the bridge to relieve the first mate, I think. Yeah, whatever. And I would make sure I was early because I want to be there in time to find out what the situation is. And I want the person I'm relieving to knock off at exactly the right time. So when I was on the 12 till 4 shift, I'd be relieving the third mate at midnight. I'd be there by 1/4 to midnight. Ready? And I'd go on, and the third mate would say, right, we're on this course, we're going there, there, and there. We need to turn left. Well, we need to go starboard 3 degrees at about 2 o'clock, but you need to check the position first and make sure you go that way, otherwise you'll hit that, what's it called? There's a ship over there, there's a ship over there. So-and-so's there, that's we're in there. We're doing this, that. Within about 5 minutes, I'll have the whole situation, and then I can take over the con. Not that everybody would call me a con man, but I'd take over the con, and I would know exactly what was going on. There's a procedure for handing over the shift, so that when I take over, everybody on that ship is safe. Everybody who, the captain down to the galley boy, would know that they were in safe hands and going in the right direction at the right pace to get where we're going to go. And there's all sorts of skills in that, the actual navigation skills. But the key thing is being a watchkeeper, paying attention, listening, thinking about what's going on, and finding out how to make. There's a little spot there, isn't there? There you go. So the same sort of thing happens in every area of life. You take a skill from one area, and it's transferable. And I was saying to Melissa Tears yesterday or the day before, I've been learning how to use this Google Hangout process so that because she started the idea, she said to me last week, I wonder if it's possible for me to do a webinar in my new group that I've started on Hypnothoughts. And I said, I don't know, nobody's done it before, but it's probably possible. I said, I'll think about it and see if I can think it through. And I said, if I don't know how to do it, I'm sure Scott will know or Richard will know. But I said, I'm pretty sure it can be done. I'm not sure whether we're allowed to or not, but for the moment, I'm going to say it's possible, and I'll look into it. So I then started looking at, how to get a Google Hangout to work, and it's a mystery. But I found my way around it the past few days, and earlier on today, myself and Melissa and a couple other people from the chat room at Hypnothoughts had a test run within the group that I started a few weeks ago for people who are organising groups. So I set up a page in there for how to do experimental things like perhaps having a webinar, and invited Melissa to come and join me, but she was on a tablet and couldn't find the invite. So I ended up talking to myself, but fortunately I've got two screens here, I can talk. In fact, I had three screens earlier on, and people in the chat room were able to ask questions, and also on the page that I had the video like this, there was a discussion box at the bottom where people could type comments. So people were able to ask things, and the question from Dennis Stew, whoever he might be, was can you play us a tune on your saw? And I said, well, you tell me the tune, I'll play it. A bit later on, I said, well, any requests? And Melissa Tears typed into the chat box something like, can you play Freebird? I thought, well, I've got a lot of busker friends who play Freebird on the guitar, classic guitar solo, and I know I've been asked before, can I play along with somebody? I've heard the tune, I know it vaguely. I had a go, and I got the first bar or two out, I think, roughly, but not a tune that I'm not familiar with. But that sort of little interaction was enough to sort of learn, well, okay, at the moment, we don't know enough to make this work today, but we've learned enough about what's not going well and what needs to go better to make it work 10 times better the next time. And ideally, Melissa, rather than being on a tablet, would need to be in front of a, sitting still in front of a webcam on a desk 10 minutes before. And Richard was very good at this. Richard sent me a message earlier on saying, I will send you an invite about 10, 15 minutes before the webinar. Make sure you're logged into Google Hangouts or Google Plus. And of course, I've worked out over the past couple of days. I'm a bit slow on some things, but a bit fast on others. So by being clear beforehand, look, this is what you need to do to make sure you get into this room. Anybody in the world can watch this, particularly those people who know it's happening. So anybody who's sort of seen the notifications can click on the link and find it. But to actually be in the room chatting to Scott and Richard, well, that's by invite only. And if you don't get the invitation, you're never going to turn up. And if I was in a different room at the time, thinking, oh, well, I'll turn up when I feel like it, I'd have missed the whole show. So I know you like to finish on time, Richard, and I'm seeing my clock. It's 3:44 here. That's 3:45 in the morning. How do you want to finish off?
Richard, you are muted.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I've unmuted myself.
Okay, any suggestions? I know, I was just saying, Richard, you must have missed that I know you like to finish on time.
No, you've done great. I want to thank you for staying up till 3:45 in the morning to talk to us today. Every Sunday night, Scott and I get together to share with you some guests or some wisdom about hypnosis or some ideas. And Lori Shaw, a.k.a. Fable Goodman, has been our guest tonight. Thank you very much. A golf clap or a round of applause or a Super Bowl kick for Fable Goodman. So there you go. There's your 333s. Scott, anything you want to add tonight? Any announcements you have coming up or anything?
The only announcements I have, no. I've got a bunch of stuff that I'm working on for HypnoThoughts in terms of the tech stuff that Fable or Lori or Fable, the tech that he just referred to. I'm playing with some tech stuff like that that's going to be really neat. And we've got some HypnoThoughts Live updates coming in the next 72 hours. But tonight, I'm just a fan of the Super Bowl and a viewer of Fable's stories.
And his dog collar.
His dog collar.
I found it.
There you go. By the way, on hypnothoughts.com, I actually bumped that thread, The Benefits of a Daily Practice, all the way to the top. So I've reincarnated it from 2011 using my regression techniques. So if anyone would like to see it at hypnothoughts.com, it's the #1 thread right now. 236 replies. A round of applause for Lori Shaw. It's been great having everybody. Same time, same channel next week. Bye now.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good.